Welcome to Angelo's Tennis Stories. And this is going to be my tennis background. Might be a long one. We'll see how good my memory is. So get some popcorn, put this on the big screen, and let's get started. I started playing tennis when I was 12 or 13. And what I did was I discovered a aluminum tennis racket in my parents' closet, and I walked up the street about 3 blocks to the local high school, and there was a huge building, and I used to hit against that wall, and the wall was so big you couldn't hit over it. If you hit the ball over it, it was going on top of the building, and it was lost forever. And that's how I got started playing tennis. That's what I used to do. And before that, I was a regular basketball player, baseball player, football player. I hated soccer, but I still played occasionally. Hockey. I did all these things every day, or most days, up until I was 12 or 13 years old. And even then, I continued playing those sports. And it wasn't until high school, first year of high school, freshman year, I started playing on the tennis team, and I was number 5 on my team because it was a team full of seniors. And all I remember about high school seniors as a freshman were they looked like men, and I was a little boy. And these guys were men on my team. Somehow I managed to get to be number 5 on this team of men as I saw it. And that was my first year. And my second year, I was number 1. They all graduated. I became number 1. My third year, I was number 2 because we had an exchange student who was number 3 from, I believe, Germany, and also a transfer from that same school that I used to hit tennis balls on the wall of. There's a transfer from that school. I went to a Catholic school, so he transferred to a Catholic school. He was number 1. He was a country club kid from the country club that I would later actually become a coach at. And he played for number 1 for that 1 year. That was my best year of high school tennis because I actually felt like I had some guys on the team that were good tennis players, or I should say real tennis players. And then my 4th year, I was number 1, which was just a disaster because I was constantly playing above my level. And I almost quit tennis. Actually, I think I did quit tennis for a little bit after that. I had a lot more interest in tennis, which I'm not going to get into at this point yet. I was a kid who worked full-time pretty much while doing all of this. I was constantly busy with things, with work, with school, chasing girls, etc. And I did end up playing. I did end up coming back. I went to junior college, and I played here for, I believe it was a season before I quit because again the girls took precedence, and the girls and the money I had, came before tennis. And I just really wasn't that interested in the competition. And I think part of it was because it just wasn't that exciting. Because as I'll get into, when I really circled back around and got into tennis, I had graduated college, which I eventually went away to college, and I graduated, came back, and I went to the U.S. Open. And I'm sure I spoke about this before, but I just got really excited watching the players up close. I'm not sure that was the first time I was there or not, but just really wanted to be around that scene. It wasn't so much the tennis as much as the people involved, the players, the excitement, the energy, the talent, the mentality, whatever you want to call it. Just if you've been to the U.S. Open, you know what I'm talking about. Or just tennis players in general. I wanted to be around those people that were good at tennis. It's the first time I think I was really around it other than that junior and that exchange student my junior year. Because this is often the case with tennis, especially as you're a kid, you're kind of subject to your environment unless you got something else coming from somewhere else pulling you in some direction. I didn't have that. I don't think I was a born tennis player. Like some of these guys, or a lot of these guys you see on TV and college players, that play on the junior junior tournament scene. I think they are like born tennis players. I don't think I'm the born tennis player type. More, I'd say the coaching type, if you want to call it that, as it pertains to the tennis scene. And in college, when I went away to college, I did start to get that scene kind of pulling me back. So I went to Kutztown University. It's a state college in Pennsylvania, who at the time had what I perceive as a really high level Division II tennis school. And part of the reason why that would be, at least from my understanding, is the coach was from India or he was from another country, and he brought the whole team was foreigners from. There was like no Americans on the team. I think it's different now, but when I went there, it was all players from different countries, and they were intense. It kind of felt like the U.S. Open qualifying all over again. And that really, I think that's what kind of brought me back into it because I'd walk past the courts and you'd see them, and they were you know how college players play. It was like that. It was like a very intense college tennis environment. And I actually asked one. I had one of the girls on the team. I think she was from India. She she was in my class, and I asked her to play one day, and I remember playing her, and I was. This is before I became good, so to speak. I mean, I had the potential, but I didn't have the tennis specific. I didn't have what I had inside me transferred to the tennis court quite yet. And she played with me. I played with her, and she realized you could tell really quickly that I wasn't a quote unquote player, and I never saw her again. And that kind of got me, uh, kind of got whetted my appetite a little bit more. And then again, leading to the U.S. Open when I came back, and I worked at a country club for a guy named Tom Schweitzer, and Tom Schweitzer was a nationally recognized master pro for the USPTA. And he was my tutor, or I was his apprentice for the next couple years at that country club that I spoke of, and another country club. One of them had two courts, had two clay courts and two hard courts, and then the other one was really beautiful, and that one had, I believe, six clay courts tucked back under the mountain in this wooded area, which is no longer there. They tore it down, made it into apartments, and I played at those two clubs. I met a lot of people through doing that because this guy attracted the best players in the area. And then I eventually discovered the indoor club that was there all the time. I discovered the indoor club and I started coaching. I started working the desk at that club and then eventually became an independent contractor coaching at the Hershey Racket Club. Now, I was exposed to a lot of things during that time. The first thing I was exposed to that kind of continued off of some of the things I've already spoken of was that one small, actually all of those country clubs in the area sponsored a what's called the Metzger Open, which is a very popular tennis tournament around here, prize money tournament, and that draws a lot of big names like Jesse Witten that you may have seen on the channel. I have videos of him playing at this tournament. He's won it like 5 times. Jimmy Arias, who's also won it like 6 times, and among many others, they come through and play this tournament every July. It used to be bigger than it is now, but back then it was still pretty big back then. And I believe even when I was there watching the Leighton Hewitt's coach, forget his name, he was in the Philadelphia area, so he played it a lot. He may have won it once. And I got exposed to this tournament. Not just exposed to it, but I was there watching every single player play. And often I would see these players at other tournaments I would go to, so I'd get a chance to follow them and really watch them up close and see what's actually happening at these tournaments, how they're playing, etc., what it's like, what it feels like, hitting with these players, gaining confidence. I remember watching a tournament once and watching, before I even started really playing with these guys, watching people play and say, man, do I look like that? Is that what I look like when I play? Asking the people around me and thinking, if they can do it, I can do it. That's what I look like. That because I hit with these guys. So it has to be like that. And up to this point, I've never filmed myself either. And then at the indoor club, which used to, from my understanding, like a long time ago, used to host pro tournaments. But what they did now was they had the Pennsylvania State tournament, which I have a couple of vlogs, or at least one vlog of on the channel. They had the women, the girls, and the boys every year, Pennsylvania State Championships. So I was exposed to that. And the club director, the club manager, didn't really do that much for tennis. They had a really good adult scene. But the juniors, he at the very least, he did a district tournament every Friday, every month on a Friday, Saturday, once a month, all year long. And that attracted a lot of good players for me to watch and talk to and play with as well. And then it got serious. It got serious when I met Mick Wallace. And Mick Wallace was a tennis pro that came in the area, and he was a serious tennis player, tennis pro. He was the type. He was born, supposedly, I don't know exactly, but it seemed like he was born to do what he does. And he's still coached to this day, and supposedly went to West Liberty University. And this guy, at least at the time that I met him, he was good. He was fast. He was knowledgeable. He was a seasoned player, and he was trying to get really good at tennis at the time in his 30s. But again, had already been playing tennis since he was really young. And he would play these tournaments and beat everybody for the most part, compete in this Metzger. And I learned a lot from him and playing with him a lot. And I'd say at the time he was at the level of a futures / challenger player. What do you call that? A UTR 11 maybe? 10 or 11. I mean, this guy could play if he wanted to. I think if he wanted to, he could play. He could legitimately compete in the futures. But, he had a family. He had a job. He wasn't trying to do that. But he did play tournaments in the area. And I definitely learned a lot from playing with him. Also, a couple other guys I'll mention. There was a Pennsylvania State champion that I eventually got close to, who was also a member of that country club. And worked with me, Doug Kaplan. And then there was Andre Fick, who played for St. Joseph's. He was also one of an original kid playing for that. Kid playing for that original country club that Tom Schweitzer managed, and I played a lot with him from his age of being 12 years old up until about 15 or 16. When he left, he stopped playing there. So that is my tennis background. A lot of it before a lot of the stuff that I talk about on this channel. I'd say up until that point, I was learning really the details about tennis, and up until that point, I had just been a guy who plays tennis like anybody else. Rec player, high school tennis player. And we'd say between the ages of 12 and 20, we're talking about 12 and 30. So we're talking about here an 18-year time span. They could have really been done in about 6 to 8, maybe, if I knew what I was doing or knew what I wanted.